Hello.
How are you guys?
There's vacuuming going on upstairs. This is gonna be my temporary setup for now.
This is how it's gonna be.
Also, I have a bunny mug. Look at this little cutie boy. I asked you guys on Twitter if you'd be interested in seeing what I do every day as a podcast producer and writer, and a lot of you actually wanted to see what that was like, and I was kind of shocked.
And then I got afraid.
Because then I was like, what if I'm not a podcast producer or writer? Like, what if that was something I made up in my head? And I went and I looked at my job description and I am. But I have imposter syndrome. I have returned after lunch. I'm not an executive producer, which is a different role. It is above my role. I am just a plain old producer and a writer. To better explain what I do, I'm gonna go through the history of me starting to work at the job I have now. So last year, as I was finishing up the first year of grad school remotely, I was looking for a job.
You guys.
Before the pandemic hit, 2 goals for a summer job I wanted to do in the summer of 2020. The first one was work in the publishing industry. All the internships got canceled. Not all, actually. I'm sure some were open and I missed that. And 2, the backup job I really wanted to do for the summer was
Event planning.
So I was fucked, right? Okay, so May rolls around. I mean, I've been applying to writing jobs. I've been applying to social media jobs, marketing, all these things, whatever I think that I could kind of have some skills at. I get a job as a content writer. What was it listed as? Was it a content writer or a technical writer? I forget. Anyway, at this podcast agency, we produce, publish, and promote podcasts for our clients. I originally started off this job doing show notes. Show notes are the summary of that episode, the topics covered, maybe the guests interviewed, what have you. They're supposed to be kind of like a book jacket for an episode of a podcast. The word count can depend on whatever the client wants. Sometimes it was a 200-word summary, sometimes it was a 600-word summary. It really depended on what the client wanted. So I was doing show notes, and in doing show notes, I was pulling quotes as well from the episode,
Smoothing them over.
the transcript doesn't always accurately transcribe, checking grammar, cleaning up the language a little bit. So I did short quotes, long quotes, and highlighted subtitles, which is sort of a chunk of speech, put them in a document, and it would be sent off to the marketing social media team. And that team would then create little social media posts of those quotes to help promote the episode. On the side, I was also doing some
Ghostwriting.
for our clients. So I would sometimes write 2 or 3 articles per episode on topics covered in the episode or like spin-off topics that would come from the hosts. I was
Ghostwriting.
for them. This was like the entry-level job, so I started that in like May or June. I'm very lucky in that our company was growing, we were getting more clients in, and it's a smaller company, so I started getting more opportunities. Then, in like September, boss asked if I would like to come on as a producer for a show and to work on a narrative podcast. The show notes I was pulling before were for more interview style or roundtable discussion podcasts. And a narrative podcast, as you can imagine, is really any podcast that has like a tight script to it. It's rehearsed, it's outlined, all of that. A famous one, Serial, any kind of true crime. Shows like Lore or Noble Blood are also narrative. Not only is it telling a story, but it's telling it in a specific format. Now, I was asked if I would like to come on and do this, and I was like, yes. And my boss was like, do you know how to write a podcast episode script? And I was like, yes.
But I didn't.
I did not know how to do it. So I just looked to television script. I kind of just pulled a 4-act structure out of that. I decided that we wanted to write 20 to 30 minute episodes. It's roughly 170 words per minute. And we were able to figure out how much writing I needed to write in order for the episode to be a certain length.
What do I actually do now?
I have 2 podcasts that I'm the producer on, and then I still do some of the technical writing that I did before and the ghostwriting. So I still do a few show notes here and there. I still ghostwrite for our clients, but now I get to be more involved in these 2 podcasts. What does it look like to create a narrative podcast episode? So one of the podcasts that I work on is a narrative podcast based on an interview. If you're doing an interview, why wouldn't you just publish the interview? Like, why are you spending this extra time and money to do a narrative? You can do the interview. That's perfectly fine. We have clients who just do interviews. I will say this. I have found through working on a bunch of different podcasts that the quality of the interview and the quality of the episode depends a lot on the guest. You can have the best hosts in the world. Hosting is another whole set of skills that I think are totally underappreciated. We could get into that more in a different video. But anyway, some guests are extremely shy, and that's okay. Some guests are natural storytellers. Some guests are very succinct, and some guests are completely off topic. I know of one of our clients who has me do the narrative podcast for her. She decided to do that after she interviewed a guest, and he spent 50 minutes talking about a topic that was not the intention of the interview. He ended up rambling on, and it was boring, and
Her viewership went down.
so having a narrative style podcast that incorporates your interviews is a good way to make sure that the quality of your show does not change from episode to episode. There will always be some episodes, I think, that are a little bit better than others, but overall, it's a safety net for guests who are perhaps maybe less entertaining, and it could be something that makes guests who are very entertaining shine even more. The ability to control the pattern of information that your listener is receiving is insane. Even just rearranging a few bits of information, maybe pushing it up to the beginning or pulling it back into the middle, it adds more tension, it adds more mystery, it adds more intrigue, it adds more pace. Obviously, just doing the interview is easier, but in the long run, I think a narrative podcast, even for interviews, pays off. So what ends up happening is the host goes and interviews somebody. They send me the raw audio. I then write a script that incorporates snippets of the guest's audio, but I also pull other sources in, include the host's thoughts on the matter, and have a little bit more of a creative spin. I also rearrange the information given in the interview into a story. What's the hook? What are the obstacles? How do they overcome it? What did they learn? That's like a very basic structure that I follow. I put it into a 4-act structure. So the script for me is kind of like the big bulky thing that I do. Then we send the script to the host, who is an executive producer. She reviews the script, she makes edits or comments, sends it back to me. I tailor the script to her advice that she wants. I add other things in, give it a little flair.
A pizzazz.
By the way, my boss is like monitoring all of this. Send it back to the host. We finally get an approved version of the script. Once we have an approved version of the script, there's a truck outside. The host then records the script that I've written, and then she sends the narrative audio to my boss and I. We look it over, we decide what needs to be done. Sometimes it needs to be sped up, where we need to clean it up a little bit, where we need to leave breath. When we feel that that narrative is really good, my boss, who's also an executive producer, and he does the audio stuff.
You guys,
I'm sure there are plenty of talented people out there who can do the writing and the audio. I can't do the audio, I'm not talented. It's extremely hard to do. I don't know how to do it. Then my boss takes the narrative audio and he takes the interview audio, the raw footage audio, and he follows the template that I have laid out in the script, meaning he includes the audio from her narrative that she recorded, the second recording, and then he inserts snippets from the raw audio of the interview into it. He interweaves those two audio tracks into one cohesive piece. Then we lay the soundscape. By the way, in the script that I write, I have the act breaks, which are helpful for the writing. You know, you end on a cliffhanger, or you use it as a time jump. The act breaks are also music breaks, and sometimes I insert like smaller music breaks within the acts if the act is a bit longer. So when my boss goes and he picks the music, lays it how he wants to, he is putting those music breaks around the writing. And then once he has combined the narrative audio with the interview audio and laid a soundscape to it, he sends it back to me. We listen to it together. We decide if anything needs to be changed or if it's good to go. This is the really cool part, because when you are writing the script, even though I've gone into my groove and I kind of know how to do it now, when you're just writing the plain script, yes, I have the interview pulled up and I'm writing the script and then I play the part of the interview that I want to include, and you can kind of see what it would sound like. It's not until you have the final product that it just really
Sings.
Podcasts need to have background music or sounds, and it's really cool to see the two audio audios, the raw interview audio and the narrative script audio woven together into a final product. Here is the thing once all those 3 tracks are laid down.
You cannot change it unless you redo the entire thing.
If you want to change one sentence or you want to take out a word once you've gotten to the final edit of all those tracks being laid down,
Too bad for you. You should have figured out it in the script stage.
because even cutting out a couple of seconds in the middle of an episode for whatever reason you want to, it screws up the entire soundscape. It screws up the entire foundation of the whole episode. I didn't realize this till after, but it's not as simple as like when you go back to edit your YouTube video. So basically,
If you really hate it,
don't publish it or redo it. So once we are happy with the final product, we send it to the host, we get her approval, and then we publish it. And then we promote it. Something I forgot to mention is timeline. How long does it take for us to do all of these things? Well, it depends on the client, depends on what they want, depends on if we are doing it based off an interview. If we're doing a narrative podcast based off an interview, the host interviews the guest, it gets sent to us the next day. I create a narrative script from it in about a day, and then I send that to the host. The next day, the host sends it back to me. I make those edits, I send it to her and my boss. And then once it is approved, usually that day, the host can take up to 2 or 3 days to record, depending on how busy she is or, whatever. They've got other things to do. Sends to my boss, who weaves it all together. That takes about a day or 2 for him to do, sometimes a bit longer. And then we approve the final and we publish. All of this is done in about a week, sometimes less, sometimes 5 days. If we're doing a narrative podcast based off of research, off true crime, off a story, something like that, that takes much longer. That might take a month to just even get the script down. Like I said before, I'm just a regular producer. I am not a executive producer where I would have more control, though. My position as a producer is growing. When we're meeting with new clients or potential clients and they want to do a narrative podcast, we try to get a sense of their vision, and we also have to do other things like budget, time, all that, and we'll decide the direction of the show, the concept, the themes, the tone. So there are a lot of other things I can do in the initial stages as well, but so far we've been lucky where a lot of clients sort of have their vision and they know what they want to do, and we help them execute what they want to do. And we also provide options, like we can do it like this or we could do it like this. I'm just saying what my experience is as a producer and a writer. I know that other producers do the audio work. I cannot. If anyone is interested in getting a podcast produced but don't have the time, or you just don't want to teach yourself how to do all the audio stuff, I can link my agency down below if you guys would like. I can also link my 2 podcasts that I help produce and I write scripts for down below if you guys want to check it out. I hope that shed a little light on what I do, and if you guys are interested in hearing more about this, let me know. If you don't care, that's fine too. Thanks guys, love you, bye.